A federal judge issued a scathing opinion against Trump, likening his detention of Columbia student Mohsen Mahdawi to McCarthyism and the Red Scare. My name is Dina Doll with the Legal AF channel. Let's break this down. So what happened is this Columbia student was arrested when he showed up for his final step of becoming a citizen, his interview. He evidently finished the interview, and according to the judge's order, ICE agents came into the room, didn't identify themselves, didn't issue a warrant, took him away, later stuffed some sort of notice to appear document in his pocket. The judge has made it clear that the student did not commit any crimes, that the Trump regime didn't even try to say that he committed any crimes. The judge pointing to the fact that Trump during the campaign trail and his executive order was clearly trying to target free speech. And the administration in their arguments to the court or paperwork to the court really didn't try to say otherwise. They were just saying that his speech was a problem for their foreign policy, but no criminal conduct that he did. And so the judge, in point after point, talking about how this is not the rule of law. Now, just to step back, what this was a habeas corpus petition, which is an old common law doctrine. It's also in our Constitution. It's also enshrined in federal statutes, which essentially is saying that you have been imprisoned unlawfully. And so that was the argument the student was making, that his imprisonment was unlawful. He did not, in this order, say that he was not ever going to be deported or couldn't be deported. That deportation case is still ongoing. But what the judge said is that you are detaining him now unlawfully, and you have to release him. And so he did release him, but it is not the end of the litigation with regard to this student. His federal case and his immigration case are both still ongoing to answer the essential question of whether or not his speech could allow him to be deported. But the judge, in ordering his release, thought that he had a high likelihood to win on the merits, which means that he's likely to win the underlying argument that he can't be deported because his deportation is based on his free First Amendment protected speech. And the judge makes that very clear that he has First Amendment rights. Quote, he says in his order, non-citizen residents like Mr. Mahdawi enjoy First Amendment rights in this country to the same extent as United States citizens. So just no question there. Anybody following this or familiar with the First Amendment knew that. But the judge making that very clear as well, that this was, if you are going to target somebody for their speech, they have a First Amendment right to their speech, so that you cannot use that as a basis. And showing in his order that the Trump was clearly retaliating against his speech and laying out the elements, basically, of retaliatory. The opinion says, quote, the black letter elements of a claim of retaliation and violate of the First Amendment are 1, that the speech or conduct at issue was protected, 2, that the defendant took an adverse action against the plaintiff, and 3, that there was a causal connection between the protected speech and the adverse action. Mr. Mahdawi has raised serious arguments on each of these issues, such that he has made a substantial claim regarding the alleged violation of the First Amendment right, because 1, his speech is protected, and 2, the retaliation is trying to deport him. So the judge also kind of very simply going through that. And the part of the scathing opinion that he makes, really this judge seeing his role in history in this order to release. He says, quote, the court also considers the extraordinary setting of this case and others like it. Legal residents not charged with crimes or misconduct are being arrested and threatened with deportation for stating their views on the political issues of the day. Our nation has seen times like this before, especially during the Red Scare and Palmer raids of 1919 to 1920, that led to the deportation of hundreds of people suspected of anarchist or communist views. Judge Anderson of the District of Massachusetts granted habeas relief to multiple immigrants detained for their political beliefs. His decision was instrumental in bringing an end to the moral panic that gripped the nation and its officials. Similar themes were sounded during the McCarthy period in the 1950s, when thousands of non-citizens were targeted for deportation due to their political views. Again, the fever passed, but not before Justice Jackson was moved to dissent, writing in a habeas case concerning the exclusion of a German war bride. And then he goes on to quote that opinion. Before I quote that, just the judge not only calling out Trump's tactics as these historical moments in our country that we thought we had moved away from, that we knew were wrong, that we learned our lesson from. And here Trump is doing it all over again and maybe even taking it to a whole other level, right? I mean, this is probably just the beginning of what Trump wants to do. But the judge also pointing to the specific judges during those eras that stood up for the rule of law and against that scare tactics that were used then. The justice himself, seeing his own role in calling out to other judges to see their own role as instruments for change, as instruments for changing the direction, the narrative, putting a stop to the unlawful scare tactics that have been used over and over and over in order to try to silence the people. And in a democracy, you can't silence the people. So this scathing and well-written opinion trying to really, I think, see his own role and ask judges to see their own role to do the right thing. And the opinion that he quotes, because as you know, in this opinion and this argument in general is like, yes, the Trump administration or regime is doing it to this particular student, but they're really doing it in order to chill everybody's free speech. This person is being made an example of. This is being done in order to scare others to speak out in a way that Trump doesn't like. The judge calling this out, that this is meant to chill free speech. And him using this quote particular, saying, quote, "Security is like liberty, and that many are the crimes committed in its name," end quote, which is essentially you're using security as a reason to trample somebody's First Amendment rights. What other things? I mean, we're seeing that with them deporting Abrego Garcia and all the other people on that plane without due process under the guise of security. What other rights are you going to take away in the guise of security? This judge calling it out. We are seeing the justice system as being the beacon, the one kind of last stand against Trump. And we're seeing them do it well. And they do have power and they do have authority, and they might work slower than we like, and they might seem less, let's say, effective, but they are effective. We just have to sometimes be patient. But here in this particular case, the Columbia student was released in a few short weeks, seeing the justice system work fairly quickly for him as his case continues and as the justice calling out Trump's tactics, an assault on our democracy. My name is Dina Doll for the Legal AF channel. Please sure to free subscribe so you see updates and get the videos whenever they come out with the many legal developments coming out of the Trump regime.
Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.